within the game, and I do think he's in demand. And I do think Chelsea have got him as one of, their clear sights, really. We did have a straw poll amongst us reporters, and I went Tuchel, just because he knows the club, knows how mad it is, and it doesn't really take a football manager, but more of a miracle worker to, I think, turn things around at that club.
We've seen managers in recent decades go back to Chelsea as well, so it wouldn't be a new thing. The Mirror as well, Charlotte, get your take on it. A new manager, miracle worker, new manager crossed out, miracle worker required is the headline here. When you think about it for McKenna, would Brighton represent a logical and safer choice than Manchester United and Chelsea?
I think, you are right in terms of McKenna, but I think if you look at any of the names that are on the shortlist, they've all got to take a step back and think, what could go into Chelsea do for their reputation? We know Pochettino, it hasn't damaged his reputation because everyone was wondering why on earth they got rid of him. But if you look at the reasons why it went, they didn't have a very strong relationship between Pochettino, the board, the chaos behind the scenes. So if you're a manager going into that, you know that that's what you're walking into. Todd Bowley's had 4 managers in 20 months. So it's not someone who isn't afraid to give you the sack. You're not really going to get the time that you necessarily need to turn the mess around. Obviously, we've seen they've signed 30 players since Bowley got there. So it is this club with plenty of chaos attached to it. That might appeal to some managers. They might think that they have, like they say, the magic wand to go in there and fix all these problems. But I think with other clubs needing managers as well, I think someone like Kieran McKenna, you're right, could sit there and look at Brighton and think a solid club, good recruitment, good backroom staff, good structure versus the chaos that is ensuing at Stamford Bridge. What exactly is it does he want as his next move? But he's earned the right to make that decision with the job that he's done at Ipswich.
Absolutely. It's shifting sands as well, isn't it, in terms of the managerial role, John? A feature from Jason Burt in the Telegraph on that. Era of the quote-unquote manager is finished. Just ask Pochettino. And there's a diagram detailing the hierarchy at Chelsea as well to figure out who everyone is and what they do. Apparently, Jason writes that there's now more head coaches than managers in the Premier League for the first time. Should they have less pressure on them then, John? Should the responsibility be passed upwards now? Or do you think that's not going to be the case? Less power and just the same responsibility?
You know what? That was another topic of conversation that cropped up at the LMAs last night. Why don't sporting directors put themselves in the spotlight? Why don't they put themselves more forward for media interviews? I actually think it's a really good point. If you are going to basically make a kind of sporting director and a structure front and centre, I'm surprised that basically, so many keep a low media profile. They're happy to take the plaudits, but kind of shy away from the limelight when it goes wrong. I think Jason's piece is absolutely spot on. It's a really good, interesting take on things, actually, simply because it's making the point, isn't it, that basically the ideal for a lot of clubs now is to have a structure behind the scenes, sporting director, recruitment, really, really strong background setup so that you can recruit the manager. And even if you perhaps sort of lose the manager along the way, if it doesn't go well, either he quits or kind of you recruit someone else, then actually the whole setup behind the scenes stays in place. Brighton's a great example of that, isn't it? They go from manager to manager, and then basically the structure remains stable behind. A lot of people in football think Tony Bloom's the best owner, chairman within the business, and basically they keep a strong structure even if they lose, say, like De Zerbi. Are they going to miss him next season? I suspect not.
No, it may not well as well. What about Pochettino and his future, whether he's a head coach or a manager, Charlotte? Interesting piece. We'll get to the Sun in just a second. But Matt Law in the Telegraph, we saw it probably just there on the sidebar. Argentine could be top candidate for England hot seat. What do you make of the potential for that to come about?
I think he's said before in the past, hasn't he, that he would relish the opportunity to manage England. We don't know what's going to happen at the end of the summer. Obviously, the Euros are coming up. If Gareth Southgate doesn't win the tournament, there's potential that he could leave there. But I think the biggest thing here is whether or not Pochettino wants to manage England is that I think he's going to be approached by Premier League clubs before the Euros is finished. We know that Manchester United had him on their radar before they hired Erik ten Hag. It was a 2-horse race between the two of them. As far as I can understand it, he is still of interest to Manchester United if they were to make the decision to sack Erik ten Hag, which no decision's been made on his future yet. Obviously, they've got the FA Cup final against City on Saturday. So you were talking earlier in the beginning about the managerial merry-go-round, and it'd be an interesting one for Mauricio Pochettino, because does he stick in terms of if someone like Manchester United, who I think he's keen to have talks with them if that position becomes available, maybe it won't get to the position where he's offered the England job. So he said in the past, like I said, that he would be interested in managing the national team, but will we see it get that far this summer?
We've had overseas head coaches before, John. What would you make of an Argentinian taking the role? There's been a fierce rivalry there. Would the Patriots object to that? To be fair, Pochettino's had a lot more positive things to say about England than most English people, hasn't he? Living here.
Yeah, and he almost feels like an adopted Englishman, doesn't he, really? Yeah. I mean, I love Pochettino. I think he's become a bit of a media darling, and I'm kind of, I don't know, secretary, chairman, and because, listen, different journalists hear different things, but I would be staggered if frankly, the FA were able to appoint Mauricio Pochettino as England boss. And listen, that take on it, I think, is fair enough until December. And so therefore, let's see how it goes in the Euros. Yes, there is a growing feeling perhaps he walks away unless he wins it. But he's absolutely everything. He's the embodiment of what the FA want as England manager, and to my mind he's done an absolutely fantastic job and has earned the right to stay. I think he's turned around the nation's footballing fortunes on the pitch and off it, and he absolutely speaks into the St George's Park project, where they develop coaches, they develop homegrown coaches as well, and bring them through the system. If you are then recruiting an overseas manager, and listen, I've long in the past sort of kind of campaigned best man for the job, to stop myself sounding like a little Englander, but at the risk of doing exactly that, I'm sorry, but if you recruit from overseas, you are admitting a sense of failure within your coaching system, because you're failing to coach the coaches, I think, through the St George's Park system. And I'm afraid to say also, I would be amazed, frankly, if an Argentinian taking over as England manager, bearing in mind the rivalry in the past, in every sense, would be acceptable to the England supporting nation. I know we all love Poch and everything that goes with it, but I'm sorry, but he probably might not be allowed back into his own country, let alone manage England. So I can't see that one.
Been an interesting move, some really interesting quotes about Pochettino saying how much he enjoys life in England, how welcomed he was, and contrasting that perhaps with other countries subtly as he's moved around. Talk about a man who's moved around, almost adopted Englishman himself, I suppose, but he's multilingual, speaks German apparently, which will come in handy. Charlotte Vincent Kompany in the Telegraph, set for Bayern, they report. Mark McGrath, German Giants want Burnley coach despite their relegation. Can you make this makes sense for the 33 times champions of Germany, 6 times champions of Europe, to get a guy who's just taken a team comfortably down to the second tier?
I mean, talk about a massive step. I know we were talking about McKenna coming up to the Premier League, but this would be absolutely huge, and it sounds like it's about to happen. So I think if we take away the fact that he got Burnley relegated, which I know is a big thing to take away, if you look at the style that he likes to play, how he got Burnley promoted to the Premier League, the players that he had, the budget that he had, that's going to be totally different in the Bundesliga. But I think the pressure is on for him to win trophies there. They finished third in the league this season. These fans are expectant. Like you just said, they've won 33 German titles, 6 Champions Leagues. He can't just go there and expect to be a mid-table side or be battling relegation or anything like that. So the pressure on him is going to be absolutely immense. But yeah, what a wild summer we're in for in terms of all the different managers changing clubs and the managerial roundabout. And this definitely wasn't one that many of us saw coming, I don't think.
No, we didn't, John. I want to see what precedent this would be.